this might be a fairly straightforward way to get a hydraulic brake onto a blaster, and it's a way that I've never seen before. I've scoured YouTube looking for what guys have done, scoured the blaster forums for what people are doing, and this may be the best, simplest, and lowest cost method of any that I've seen, so fingers crossed. Alright guys, fast forward a little bit. Fast forward a lot of it actually. It's August 1st, 2021 today, and I've been riding around, so I've been kind of putzing and putting off this project, but started moving it forward, and I wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are right now. This peg is from an 87 to 02 Blaster. It's OEM, so it comes with the foot brake that had the cable pull set up on here. That's what this remnant is. What I have done here is this is a piece of 1/8 inch mild steel just welded on here, and I'll measure that, but I think that's, better to have more than less, but that's probably 2.5 inches coming back and welded all the way back over here. So start a little bit further on. Then, having drilled that, I was able to just zip tie this reservoir to the frame to kind of get the idea of where I wanted that action. This reservoir and this brake setup here, just bought this on eBay used. This I'll have to double check. This is either coming off a Warrior or a Raptor 660. I think this is a Raptor 660. Lots of these available, cheap money. From here, after zip tying and finding my angle, this is just another piece of 1/8 inch steel. I'm gonna say we're just about a 4-inch piece. If you had a 4-inch piece by 2-inch piece, you'd have plenty. Drilled 2 holes in it here, and then bolted to one of the holes. This is an existing mounting point on the frame, and it takes an M8 1¼ pitch bolt. That implies there's only one point of contact with the frame, so there's some risk that this could rotate. It's pretty snug, and you see the way it bumps up here. It can't rotate this way. Could spin backwards, so I may just put a weld or a tack weld on there or do something different. I had been mocking this up as a bigger plate to cross over to the front here so I could tack weld here, but then I'd need spacers to bring this reservoir off. That messed up the angle here, so ultimately this is where I've landed. The brake line just ran around back, ran it through some existing framework here. And now we come to the back. This is the original carrier. This is a 2001 Blaster. Some guys will swap out this carrier for an 03 to 06. If you can find them online, I see them somewhere around $200 to $350, so a lot of money for a carrier. If you get the carrier, move that out of the way. If you get the carrier, the caliper mounts are hung back like this, and at that point you can bolt on some of the other aftermarkets. You could bolt on aftermarkets for the Blaster 03 to 06. I believe, check me though, but you could also bolt on Warrior and Raptor calipers. I didn't want to spend that kind of money, so that leaves me needing to fabricate the mount. Looking on the bottom here, this is part of the mounting bracket for this caliper. You'll see these all over eBay. Here's the thought. The thought and the challenge. One thought is to build a bracket that's going to go between these 3 bolts. This one gets the top of the caliper and back here, because this could be flat and I could have the caliper hanging back here, which is what you'd see on an 03, 06 Blaster. This is pretty easy. Find some stock, some pipe, probably somewhere in 1 inch to 1.25 inches. I'm going to test that out, drill my holes, and bolt. That holds this roughly in place. However, that doesn't keep this from wanting to potentially spin, because there's nothing on this bottom bolt here. Why not just fabricate one bolt? And I have seen fellas do that if you look on blasterforum.com. I am struggling to figure out how I would get a new plate if I were to fabricate a plate from up here all the way around and down to the bottom. So if I build this bar on top, how am I going to keep this from rotating? My thought to keep this from potentially trying to do a rotate move is to get a piece of, you know, flat stock, something of nature, and go from this mount down here on the bottom up to here. What is this? It's the same one on the other side, but it is a part of the swing arm, not the carrier. So it's not going anywhere. Ultimately, that bolt is what helps hold on the skid here that protects the chain and the rotor. So the bolt would go through, pick up with a piece of 1/8 inch plate, come back up. So it's just kind of a bar that holds this, so you can't do any of that rotation. So that's where I am today. One more thing to mention here, the master cylinder. Right now the master cylinder just would plug right in the top here, sit right next to my pipe. Now when I put a heat temp against here, you know, we're 100 degrees. It holds the temp pretty well, but I don't like it. So the thought is to replace, you know, this hydraulic line, run it longer, and put a tab in over here so that I can put the master cylinder right here, screw it in, bolt it to the frame, and then run down. That's one thought. I'm sure I'll get this master cylinder just sitting in here and clamped for testing, but I'm gonna have to find a way to extend this and run it to some place that is safe from the heat, and that's my first thought. So far, if you've got this on your existing blaster, some people haven't gotten rid of the peg, you're already in luck. If you need the peg and you haven't cut everything off, you can get a peg and a pedal for about 20 bucks on eBay. Find yourself a rotor. If the rotor's already been taken off, you can find that for used $20, $30 on eBay. Then shop for this hydraulic setup. I think you can find that for about $40 on eBay. Once you have that, you have your peg, hydraulic, and your rotor. You've got what you need, and you can get some of this bar stock at the Home Depot. This is just 3/4 inch by 4 feet, 1/8 inch. This is what I'll use down low down here, and you can get wider stuff. You can get wider stuff as well for this plate. You can also just get 1/8 inch rolled mild steel on Amazon, a 10 inch by 10 inch plate. And if you have a Sawzall, a plasma cutter, anything of the nature, you can cut this down. So I can't quite do this without welding. I had to weld on the peg, but the rest of this from a fabrication standpoint really looks to be pretty simple. I'm thinking this is rectangular and square cuts and some grinder bevel on the edges, and that's what I'm hoping. So this might be a fairly straightforward way to get a hydraulic brake onto a blaster, and it's a way that I've never seen before. I've scoured YouTube looking for what guys have done, scoured the blaster forums for what people are doing, and this may be the best, simplest, and lowest cost method of any that I've seen. So fingers crossed. So this is from the Home Depot. You could also get this solid. It's a 4-foot section. It'd be nice if you could get a 3-foot section. The bolt holes, or the holes aren't going to line up with the bolts. You'd still have to re-drill. So I'm actually not going to use this. I expect I'll return this because I have some piece of frame from a bed frame that's also 1.25 inch, considering I have to drill anyway. I'm going to go ahead and use this because then I don't have to use this and I can return it. It'll be kind of tight. I'm going to have to think about that. Maybe a notch. But if successful there, then the caliper will bolt in on the end here. Drill another hole hole down in here. Looks something like that. I'm going to grind out the bottom here. What's happening is it's catching on this this bolt right here. That 1.25 inches is catching on this upper part of the carrier right in the middle. So I'm going to see if I can mark that out on my piece, grind it a little bit to set it down so that I get a little more drilling room for my bolts here. Just a hair anyway. We'll still have the structure we need. We'll have 3 sides versus 4, so. Alright, a quick 15 minutes of grinding, and I just took out just a dimple there on the grinder and just started to touch through the outer wall. So not an awful lot, but that gets it to sit. Actually, that's really kind of nice. Boom. Sits down nice and tight, and then I touched it with the fine wheel to get my existing marks off. So sitting on there, so nice like that. Let's remark this. Much better clearances there and there. So I don't want this caliper. So I don't want this caliper to sit right on the rotor. So I got to pick my hole spot up enough that once I get my bottom one figured out, and ultimately this hole doesn't have to be too precise. I would just say that I want it in this upper quadrant here. If it's in the upper quadrant anywhere, I'll be all right for this. That said, let's see here. Upper quadrant. Give me my Sharpie. I'm going to go ahead and say that if I did it I'm going to have to come all the way through from the other side. Because this is threaded, so the bolt's going to come all the way through and use these threads to hold because there's not clearance between here and the rotor otherwise. Went nice and straight. Moment of truth here. Alright, we're on to something. It's still ugly. This had some longer bolts poking through, but I got enough clearance there I can put a washer on, so I'll reuse this one, and then this longer one will go here. I'll still have to get probably 1.5 inch bolt to thread in here, but everything is held in place up top, which means I can come down here picking my spot so I'm not resting on the rotor, measure what I want between here and here, which means I'll also need to get a short stubby M8 1.25 for this hole. We're close. We're close. We're close. It's messy. It's a mock-up now, but I believe we're gonna have something here. Ooh, it'll be exciting. I can stop falling off the back on wheelies. There's the idea. I picked my bolt holes at 110 millimeter. Drilled this one for the M8. It's an M8 1.25 pitch. Gonna need a much smaller bolt here and definitely Loctite. And then this one will feed in around guard. I believe that's going to work fine. I'm going to clean up the ends here. We'll need some different screws. Nuts and bolts here, sorry. But when this is all tight, this is sitting up off the rotor. Nice pad overlap. Oh, this can work. Alright guys, we're going to finish up this this brake system today. Just kind of keep going on and off. There's other things to do, but we've been out riding, having some fun. So last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put new pads on here, and I'm going to reflush the brake fluid. I used .3 brake fluid on here, but it was fluid I used 3 years ago. So it's a container that's been open for 3 years, and brake fluid absorbs moisture, and the more moisture that it absorbs, the less effective it is. So I had used the brake fluid container that I had when I had rebuilt the brakes on the Tao scooters after Hurricane Matthew. So I'm gonna put new pads on. These ones aren't too bad, but we're gonna slip a new set on, and we're gonna bleed it down, and then I expect we're gonna call it done until such point in time I might come back and do a block off kit on the parking brake, stuff like that. But all right, pro tip: to get the pads out here, you've got to take out 2 bolts. They're behind a locking bar, and if you need to get a little muscle on these, loosen these bolts here that hold the pads in while the caliper's on. So if you take it off and you got to fight with these, you have no torque. So loosen these up while the caliper's on, then take the caliper off and pull your pads. All right, there's pad number 1. Look at the gouges in this guy. Oh, wowza. Wow. No wonder this didn't really work too great. Wow. Big gouges in this one. Rotor looks fine. Alright, we're going to change the pads. We're going to clean this up a little bit. Rebuild it. So this pad should lift right out now. And this guy, we're going to do a little work cleaning him up, compress him back in. So to put the new pads in, if I need space, I'll just use a C-clamp, set it in here, clamp, set that back in with the top of my reservoir off, and I should have plenty of space. So, all right. So I hemmed and hawed a little bit putting this back together, but I've decided to sit this in the ultrasonic for a bit to get it cleaned up before I put anything back together. I don't have a block off kit right now, so this is my parking brake. I'm going to sit that in there as well in the cage so it's off the edges, and run this for a bit and see how much this can do to clean things up. So my mixture here is actually tap water with a couple of capfuls of brass cleaner used for reloading. We're going to set this in. It's heating up, but I'm going to come back to this with the video, because when you hit the button on this, the ultrasonic noise just wipes out the audio. It's real lousy to listen to. So we're going to give this 20 minutes and then come back to it and take a look. All right, 30 minutes of grass whipping later. The ultrasonic has shut off. I did a 20-minute, then I did a 10-minute. So let's see what this brake looks like. Then I'm gonna get a drink of water. Oh, it's like trying to weed whack soup today. Everything's so wet. Some warm liquid pouring out of this thing. We're gonna get it all drained. We are looking clean though. Definitely. That cleaned up pretty nice there as well. See this gasket that's all shot on here. And very nice. These bolts had all kinds of crud on them. Yeah, that's got a huge gouge out of it. Thickness, not too worn, but nonetheless. So here we go. Drop one in there. slip the second one in. Now we should be able to get these guys up. Make sure I get my locking ring going on here first. Alright guys, I just went for a little rip on the Blaster, testing out the rear brakes, and you know, we have brakes. We have rear brakes, which is really exciting. I'm a little reserved because they feel soft. The front cable pull brakes will still stop this thing on a dime. The rear ones, I can stand on them, and it's stopping it, but I'm not able to lock up the rear tires. You know, there's resistance. Rotor's warm. I've bled this whole thing through. Bled, brand new .3 on there. Up here you look at the fill level, because I am at an angle keeping away from my pipe here. And we're up high enough so that the top point, we're at the low, so we're not sucking any air. Here's the distance. You see, so quarter inch, between a quarter inch and a half inch of vertical on this master cylinder reservoir. All of that there. Interestingly, it's wet. And I don't think I did that. Filling and overspilling. So I'm going to wipe that and watch when I go riding. That, maybe I just found why I have soft brakes. Maybe I have this was used, but I can get a new one of these for 15 bucks. So if this whole thing works out, I'll swap that out. New pads. One of the pieces of one of the challenges here is the rotor floats. So the rotor can move laterally here. So you're trying to find the best position to crank this caliper into place that just touches the outside pad, because the inside of the caliper is what comes in and puts the pressure on here. So, but we have brakes. So if any of you have any insight as to why my brakes are soft, put it down in the comments. I'd love to know, because I feel like I'm 95% of the way, 95% of the way there, just missing a final detail to really get this tuned in nice. Maybe it's that leak I just pointed out. We're going to watch that, but for now I'm going to romp around. Neat little project. Took me longer than I thought, but it was really only one spot you needed a weld of the rest of this, straight out of Home Depot.